Hello, Huddlers. I'm thrilled to introduce you to Tahnee Perry, a leading Gen AI consultant who's helping marketing teams transform their operations through responsible AI adoption while maintaining their human-centric approach. What could be better, man and machine? Anyway, hello, Tahnee. How are you and where are you this fine day?
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. As I was seeing people's videos pop up, it's great to see all these familiar faces. I'm in another group, Coffee Talk. And so, Nancy, nice to see you. I didn't realize there was so much crossover. So I'm actually calling in from the Bay Area. I'm just outside of San Francisco, and I think it's like 41 degrees today, which is
Ah,
that's like being in the middle of the Arctic for a Californian. So I'm feeling a little chilly myself. But all you
uh,
folks who are in those 8-degree temps, I don't know how you do it. Bless
yeah.
you.
You don't go outside, that's how. And you have wonderful jackets and coats and boots and all those other good things. But I can't, having now hearing the Australian accent, Sydney, Melbourne, how do you end up here?
Yes, originally from Melbourne, and I
Okay.
try to get back there as much as I can. My dad is actually from the States. And so I grew up hearing about America and this wonderful country. And when I graduated from college, I decided I'd come over for a year and just do a year and try it out. And I never left. So I'm still here.
All right, decades later,
Mhm.
we have that way. Love it. So, all right, I know that you are doing a lot of helping organizations sort of bring Gen AI across particularly with marketing departments adoption. And so let's start with three common mistakes you see CMOs making when trying to drive AI adoption across organizations, and just sort of list them, and then we'll go through them one at a time.
Yes. The three most common mistakes I see CMOs or team leaders making, because it's not just in marketing, it's across an organization. The first one is not investing in formal training and just hoping that by talking about AI, everyone will figure it out and it will work. And I don't see that working as well as it should. The second is trying to implement AI or looking for a tool without sitting down and figuring out what goals you have, and or even doing your strategic planning. It's just like, let's throw some things at the wall. And yes, there's a place for that, but I think CMOs really need to spend more time goal setting than they do. And three, ignoring the fear and uncertainty around AI. So I think team leaders sometimes underestimate how much change management you need to apply when it comes to AI, because this is brand new. There is a lot of uncertainty around it. And if you don't take the time and you're intentional about that, then it can create a lot of angst with the team.
So I love it. It's great. It's funny. I was working on one of my Saturday rants, and the headline is "Just Go Play." Said the CMO, and I think that's so 2024, if not 2023. But let's talk about what does it really mean when you say invest in training? What does that look like today?
What's worked really well for me, and I do this with a business partner as well, is you sit down with the executive team and you run a discovery session and figure out what is it that you have pain points around today, and how are you trying to address them? Where can AI fit in? And then plotting it all out and being really intentional about how you train your team. The thing with AI is that it really, to get the most out of it, it's dependent on each role, right? There's no one size fits all for Gen AI. So if you are a search marketer, you're going to use it very differently than if you're a growth marketer. And so what's worked is breaking all your teams up into their functional roles and then providing training for that role, because then they have time to talk about their use case, because their use case won't be a use case for someone else. And I think for people to really get the most out of it, they need to understand how to use it for themselves.
Right.
So I think that's the main point there.
Well, it's so interesting because if you go back to Go Play, what Go Play meant was, oh, go get on ChatGPT and start creating stuff. But not everybody on the team is a content creator, so that's a problem. And or they might be visuals or so forth, and then they might try it, but without proper training, you just sort of start doing stuff and you hit a wall pretty quickly. You say, oh, that isn't very good. I don't need that. And so initially, at least, in 2023 and 2024, a lot of writers said, oh, I can do better. This is stupid. Why am I wasting my time? So uh, the challenge that I see, and this is sort of, is built into the solution is people forget they can ask these machines, how do I get the most out of you? How do I solve this problem as opposed to that? So basically summarizing that first one, it's training in context of the challenges that you have and the role that you play within the organization. So obviously that takes a flexible training partner, whether it's, it's an organization like yours or others, but you can't just say, I'm going to train you on ChatGPT. That won't be enough.
Yeah, so I've seen, just a quick note on that. I've seen a lot of companies say, go out and get your own training. So go take a course. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is helpful. But what I would say is that a lot of those courses are very generic, right? So you're just kind of learning the basics. Where teams really get the most and they really start to excel is when it's designed specifically for their job. And I think that's why it really helps a company and a team if you hire an AI expert in your industry who understands your use cases and what your customers are going through, so you can align all of that together.
Right. And it's interesting because I had a huddler reach out who wanted to do a boot camp for their entire marketing organization, and I realized initially, and as I thought about it, that part of the boot camp is to sort of explain kind of the art of the possible. But ultimately, if you don't get it into specifics, the context of the need, it's going to go over people's heads. They're not going to get the information they need. So this has to get very specific very quickly, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So we've seen this with all tool adoption is there's a bright, shiny object. It's a tool. We all love our new tools. We say, oh, let's go get that one because everybody's talking about that tool. And so you get your ready, fire, aim problem, which we see so often in so many different adoptions of technology and marketing. What, when it's working well and we're setting the goal first, can you give an example just of a CMO saying, this is my goal, and then finding the tool that would work for that goal?
I am seeing this a little bit less now than I was last year. Last year, everybody wanted their silver bullet. They wanted to grab a platform and just, kind of stick it into the tech stack, and that's going to solve all our problems. And what I was advising is you should sit down and do an assessment of the current tech stack you have. Because there are a lot of platforms that are developing their own AI functionality. Take Salesforce and HubSpot as an example. They are working really, really fast to launch AI features. Salesforce has Agentforce, HubSpot has Breeze. And what I was finding is you'd have these marketing teams that were going after these newer platforms and ignoring what they currently had in-house. And I was like, you don't need to do a search until you sit down and you figure out what your goals are. You do an assessment of your current tech stack and then figure out what's missing. Because yes, there are always gaps in some of these bigger platforms that maybe don't suit your needs. And so that's when you say, okay, now let's go out and look for a platform that will solve our problem.
So this is tricky, and I want to sort of push back a little bit, is you don't know what you don't know when in terms of what problems these tools can solve. And so you might say, oh, I have a problem in the pipeline moving from top of the funnel to the bottom of the funnel, and that's a problem. But you might not realize what you really have is a workflow problem, right? Where we've got content creators over here, we've got web managers over here, we got SEO people over here. There are a lot of different touches, and right now lots of things move manually. But somebody has to sort of say, hey, this is a use case that you may not be thinking about, right? So that's the tricky part of goal setting and these tools, because they're solving problems that we didn't even think that we needed to solve.
Yeah, it's not an exact science. Sometimes we have people who come and say, oh, we have this problem and we want AI to fix it. And we dig in and we ask questions and we're like, that's not an AI problem to solve. It's,
Right.
it's something different. It's either a people problem or, like you said, it's a process problem. And you can use AI maybe for a small portion of it, but you need to architect this thing in a different way. And AI is not going to solve it all for you.
No? Oh, come on. We just put
I
it in
know.
there and we say, hey,
I'm
ChatGPT,
sorry.
help me solve this problem. And you put it all in there and they outline it for you. Uh, I do think there is a bit of uh, there's nothing AI can't solve syndrome right now, right? There's a little bit of that. And I think it is important to at least give these tools a chance to help you think through a lot of this. But so, all right, the third point was ignoring the fear and uncertainty. Let's talk about that and how you help sort of brands think about this and solve it. Specifically, marketing leaders solve it.
Yeah, I think this is something that you could partner with your HR leader, your team leads. So if you have VPs and directors, and what I've seen work really well is you sit down and you plan out exactly how you're going to introduce artificial intelligence into your organization. And many of you are probably already doing this because it's been such a big topic for the last couple of years. But I do think there's still a time and a place if your team is feeling uncertain, especially if they're hearing about layoffs, to say, okay, here's how we use AI in our company and why. Here's our AI policy. Here are the rules. I think there's a lot of fear and uncertainty when people don't understand how to operate, right? If there's no clear guidelines. So the first thing you need to do is, I think, have an AI policy around how to use it and how not to use it, because that's very helpful. And then the second is reassuring your team that your plan is not to replace them with AI, like they might be hearing. It's to integrate AI as a part of their day-to-day to help them do their job better. And if you encourage your team leaders to sit down with each of their solo contributors and say, okay, where are the areas where this could help you? And let's work on integrating it, then they'll see the proof in your statement that you're not going to replace them. And that, I think, builds a culture of experimentation, of support, adaptability, creativity, instead of a culture of fear where everybody feels like, okay, I could be next. I might be losing my job here as soon as the AI bot is better than me.
Uh, so let's talk about two things separately. First, on policy. As you were talking about policy, I'm thinking about, man, this has to be pretty dynamic because these new tools keep coming out and doing different things, and they keep getting better and better and better. So, what does a good policy look like right now, and how do you keep it up to date?
Yes. What I've seen work is companies who develop an AI council, and it doesn't need to be, or a committee, it doesn't need to be super formal. It should be a collection of folks who are really passionate about AI and you get a broad cross section of people. If you're just doing it for marketing, people in all your different marketing departments who sit down on a semi-regular basis and say, okay, what do we want the rules around AI to be? What are the privacy concerns, the security limitations? Do we need to consider any legal aspects? And then draft up it could be, it doesn't have to be like a 14-page document. It could be
Right.
like it could be like the 12 commandments. For example, do not put PII information, personally identifiable information into any chatbot. Even if it's a pro account where some of the security is a little more robust, even then don't put any PII in. That's a really bad thing to do. If you are using a tool for company work that is not part of our tech stack, make sure that you let us know that you're doing that, just so that we have awareness. So it could just be simple things like that. And then the second thing I think you should do with your AI council is make them available for people who have questions, because every company, every team is different, and people will naturally, as they start to experiment and use these tools, think of things like, oh, am I allowed to do this? What are the implications if I do this? And should I be worried? It's really great if they have somewhere to go to get that answer. And so I think if you have a policy and a committee or a council that can help people answer those questions, again, you're going to foster this culture of accountability, of openness, trust, transparency, and that will really help.
It occurred to me as you were talking about that it would be very easy to create a little chat bot that had all the rules that you could ask.
Yeah,
Right? You could
exactly.
create your own. So now we're using the technology to help us manage the technology, but that's really where this will go, right? You upload the information, they say, this is our policy, talk to the bot if you want to get the baseline, if talk to a human if you really want to go deep or you have concerns.
Exactly. You know, it's funny, you'd asked me for some examples, and I have one. So I work a lot in the travel industry, and I worked with a travel manager who, if anybody works at a very big company, there's a travel policy, right? And the travel policy can be very long. You know, how much can you spend? What hotels can you stay at? What's your per diem? And travel managers, they get questions all the time. So what I did was I helped them load their policy into 11 labs, and we created a voice agent, and then they just published the voice agent. And anytime they got a question from a traveler, they said, go to the travel agent bot and it'll answer
Right.
it for you. So you could do something like that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, you can use the tool to solve the problem. I want to go back to, you're not going to lose your job. People are going to lose their jobs. There's no doubt. I mean, this is like saying to the blacksmiths as Ford is getting his assembly line going, oh, don't worry, there'll be plenty of jobs for, guys making horseshoes. No, those jobs are going to go away. And that's a very bad analogy, but in the sense, and we're already seeing this, that people are right now, they're moving people around because at least their content teams are getting that much more efficient. So I wonder if it's a false promise to say no one's going to lose their job. Certainly the people who don't adopt these tools are going to lose their jobs.
Yeah, I wouldn't promise that no one's going to lose their job. I think you could say our intention is not to replace you specifically with AI, if that is your intention. Obviously, if you do intend to completely rip out your entire marketing team and add in AI agents, you could do that. At this point, I don't recommend that. At least I haven't seen anybody pulling that off successfully. You need humans to drive the AI. But I think over time, what you can do is you can be honest with your team and talk about how technology is making everyone more efficient. There are going to be some roles that become obsolete, and you need to keep a close eye on what those might be. And then you need to go to the folks that are in those roles and say, hey, you've got a choice. You can upskill into something else, or you could go somewhere else and find something different, and we'll help you do that. I think if you just like sit back, relax, and don't pay attention, and then let it all like hope that it gets figured out, then you're going to have mass hysteria in your company. So
Right.
I
But
do think.
I think
Okay.
there's a couple of consistent things is we're training you so that we're upscaling you. We're giving you the opportunity to grow into this new world and get ahead. And so in doing the training, in a sense, you're taking the fear out of it because you're showing them that they can do this. And you're also showing them how it applies to their job specifically. And then upskilling them, you're preparing them for the thing. That feels like a very positive way of talking about this. Is that we're going to enhance your ability to do your job. And we're not going to leave that to chance by say, go play. We're going to work with you to do this. Again, having said all that, we know that PE firms and so forth saying, do more with less, marketer, do more with less. And Gen AI there's a presumption, at least among this particular finance group, that Gen AI and AI means that you can do more with less people. So tricky. It's a tricky time. So all right, we covered those three, and that was a lot. Let's talk about sort of, there are within companies, there often are these early adopters or trailblazers, if you will, that come out. Can you talk about some in your experience where some of these champions have come from and how they are driving real change?
Yes, I have a couple of examples. There's one client I've worked with, and I loved this client because there were all these people they weren't even in leadership roles. They were sometimes solo contributors, they were managers or directors, and they were really leaning in on the AI. So when I went in and I advised with them, they were already very far along and very open to experimentation. And there was this one gentleman who was it was a media brand in the automotive space. And this gentleman was in the I think he managed the content platform, so he wasn't responsible for the website. And what he saw was that they would get hundreds of press releases every day from all of these automotive companies, and all of these companies wanted them to publish their press release. And of course, if you publish a press release, it's so boring. Nobody wants to read that. It's just, like company boilerplate. But the reporters, they had a pretty small writing staff, and they didn't have time to go out and interview every single client or figure out what exactly they wanted to publish. So this gentleman went to the engineering team and worked with them to use the OpenAI API and wrote a very long prompt that took the content of the press release, turned it into a template using their style, what they liked to have in their articles, and then it automatically delivered that new templated PR to the writer and said, what do you think of this content? Here's somewhere here are some sections where you might want to add in some of your own thoughts or commentary. And the reporter could spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes reviewing it and then hit publish, and it went straight into the website. So I was really impressed with that, because this gentleman didn't have any coding experience himself, but he went to the software development team and said, can you help me set this up? So that to me is a great example of a champion in a company who is improving workflows, saving time, helping them do more with less, all on his own. And you'll find people like that in every company.
And I love that example. And by the way, we had this very conversation about how could we use this tool to create this kind of workflow. And I'm so glad we're talking about it, because to me, that's where the most exciting use cases of this content is. Low-hanging fruit. Yeah, great. Awesome. If you have really good editors who can create content that's, 95% better than most. Awesome. But workflow, like what you described, if you had to do it manually, would have taken hours and hours and hours and hours and multiple steps. And I want to talk to that person how they did it, because I need that. we have a very specific use case for exactly that. And I know that as the CMOs start to think about their various steady content workflows or problems that they have, and realize, oh my God, I can do things I could never do before. Either they're going to have to wait for a read.ai or an open. Some of these other some of these tools that are coming out to try to solve these workflows, or they're going to have to figure out how to create their own.
Yes.
So interesting. You said, do you have another example? That's a great one. Do you have another example like that?
Let me see what I wrote down. I already told you about my travel policy. That was my other example, because that was
Right.
this particular company was very large, and they had no formal AI policy, even though I was encouraging them that they should do that. But the travel manager had this real pain point and was being inundated with his emails. So, I was like, you could do this on your own if you can get approval to use the tool, and then you just host it. And so that's another example. And then what else do I have? Yeah, I
And
think that's all I have for now.
no, that's fine. I've been thinking about the policy one, and I've got to believe that you could go on ChatGPT or Claude and say, what are the, outline what should be on a policy thing. Then you could start to, if you had a private sandbox, start to put in your own kind of things, concerns, and you could work with it to get to a policy probably pretty darn quickly.
I
Put
think
it
what
on.
you could, yeah, actually what you could do is you could take some of your corporate documents, your employee hand guide, if you have a culture or vision document, a mission document, feed all of that in and say, okay, based on what you know now about our company, help me create an AI policy that fits for who we are.
Right. So yeah, use the uploading capabilities of these GPTs to get to know you and write something custom.
Yeah.
It always comes down to original data. It's funny. Almost all of this does. And that's such an important part of thinking about the applications of this, is understanding that the better the data, the more first party, the more personalized, the more it is about your company, the better the output is going to be. Fascinating. Okay. Let's talk about your 4-step formula for AI adoption. Can you walk us through what teaching teams to collaborate with AI looks like in practice?
Yeah, so I have 4 steps. The first is, we talked a little bit about this, setting goals and having a strategic plan. 2 is building your learning program. 3 is giving them the right access to the tools. And then 4, giving them some latitude to fail. So to go through that in a little more detail, the
What was
setting
4?
goals,
Wait, what was 4?
allowing them latitude to fail.
Okay, fail.
So setting up a
Got it.
culture of experimentation.
Right. Okay. So
So for
let's
the
go.
Yeah, so for the first one, setting goals in the strategic plan, you probably already have a strategic plan as a CMO. So take that, review it, and see where you think AI fits in so that you have very specific, measurable goals and tactics around AI. The second is build your learning program. I always recommend formal training, which we talked about, but if you don't have the time or the budget for that, there are other ways to get around it. There are always people in your organization who love artificial intelligence and experimentation. So pull them in, create a series of lunch and learns, or ask folks to talk about their success stories on your all hands. Maybe you spend 5 or 10 minutes where each department has to share what they've done in the last quarter that really changed their workflow and saved them time. So there are all these little things that you can do as part of your day-to-day to help your culture learn. And then giving them access to the right tools, I'd say, again, go back and assess what you currently have and make sure that your team are using those features and holding them accountable for using them. And if they don't have an understanding of it, maybe you get in touch with your customer service rep and say, hey, can we set up a training for the AI features that are a part of your platform? And then if you don't have the features you want, that's when you go out and you do a formal RFP process for something new. And then finally, for allowing latitude to fail, people don't like being told that they've done the wrong thing or that they are in trouble for trying something new. So I think you have to be really clear as the CMO. You can say, here's your sandbox. Here are the things that you can do. Here's the space that you can play in, and it's okay if it all goes wrong. If you have mission critical areas of your business that it would be catastrophic if AI did something that you didn't expect, then you'd be very clear. Do not experiment in that section. Just stay away. There's a tried and true process for that. Let's not mess about with it. But you have to give your team space to be able to fail at things that are less mission critical. Otherwise, you won't ever find out those things, those workflows, the processes, the tools that really help move you forward.
Boy, a lot of things to unpack there. First, one of the things that we've done in CMO Huddles, entire huddles have just been devoted to CMOs sharing things that they've done and application they've done, and that is another way of getting these getting people thinking about what the art of the possible right now. The interesting about the using them, I know that a lot of companies do actually monitor usage of other software tools in the organization. It's a little creepy, but they do it. I imagine that that's possible as well with the tools, but I haven't heard anybody actually talk about that. Like, can Big Brother actually know if I'm using all three of the ones that we subscribe to?
Usually there's usually a place inside each, at least the enterprise level tools that will show you who's
Right.
logged in and the last time they logged in. So, if you do, I actually remember when I was the VP of marketing we were a travel technology company, we implemented a platform called Clue. It's a competitive platform. They actually have some pretty neat AI functionality if you're interested in looking at that one. But we implemented it, and for it to really work, your sales team have to use it, because if they're not in there looking at the content and they're reviewing the battle cards and using the messaging, there's no point in investing in it. So we used to have these review sessions every month where we'd say, okay, these are the top 5 users, and we made it more fun and gamified it. They got an incentive for being the top user, and we found that really helped and encouraged the logins. And when you saw your teammate who's in there every day and they were winning a $50 gift certificate and they were winning more deals, it helped encourage the rest of the team. So you could take that approach as opposed to making it more of a stick.
Yeah, I could definitely. It's funny because it is a behavior change, right? You look at the blank sheet of paper if you're a writer, and now you shouldn't necessarily you can have this sparring partner where, hey, I'm thinking about this, and what are some themes that I could be going after? But you have to, and the more you use it, the more you go, oh yeah, and it becomes part of your behavior. And I love Lisa Adams, who I know you work with, and I just did this because she talked about importance of proximity. And so on her homepage of her phone, she's got the tools right on her homepage. I copied her immediately. So there's my Perplexity and ChatGPT and Claude. apps right there. And I think that's brilliant, because if it is right there on the first page, and you are more likely to use it when you're playing with your phone, as opposed to, say, your gaming apps. So failing, culture of that's such an interesting thing right now, because again, a lot of CMOs, particularly ones owned by PE firms, are failing is not failing fast, failing, talking about, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about optimization and improvement and eking out another conversion and squeezing in another sale right before the end of the quarter. So the notion of a culture of experimentation withers under that kind of pressure. So, and the other part of it is, it goes back to this first thing that I said, the last thing you want to do is say, go play. Because that doesn't lead to strategic adoption of tools. It leads to isolated incidents because they don't know how to play or what to play. So talk about a little bit where you've seen the culture of experimentation actually work. Can AI help that, or is it already something the company has to have in, and then it just works here too?
I think there's finding a balance. I think if you say go play, that's too broad and people don't know what to do with it. It's like that problem, the blank page problem that you mentioned. You need to give folks at least some guidelines of where to start and what they should be looking for, what an ideal outcome might look like. And then on the other end, I've also seen companies who have so much bureaucracy in trying to move a new project or a process forward. It just strangles all the creativity, and what happens is people think this is too much effort. It's going to take so long for me to write up this plan or this memo and get it through all of the different levels of approval. I'm just going to do it the way I've been doing it. And so I think as a CMO, it's your job to sit down and say, what's the channel that people can operate in, where I give them some guidance, but we don't make it so arduous for them to get started. And what I've seen work really well is having the formal training, making sure they have the policy and the knowledge they need, giving them access to the right tools. Like, it's surprising the number of companies that don't give access to either a pro version of ChatGPT or the AI version of their work suite, like Google Workspace or Microsoft Copilot. They're not supporting them enough in that experimentation. And then the second thing is allowing them to spend some time going through the experimentation process. Like, working with AI, sometimes if you're changing your workflow, it takes up a bit of time. You might want to spend 3 or 4 hours on it. If you go, as a CMO, if you go back to your people and you're like, why are you wasting your time on this? You're going to crush all the creativity in that moment. What you have to say is, oh, you experimented with this thing and you failed. Well, what did you learn? And how can you apply that to the next step? And then the next thing you can say is, when you've actually created something that's saving you time or money or improving the team's, mental health, let's share that at the next team meeting so people can see what you did and how you got there, and then they can apply the same kind of process. So I hope that's helpful.
Oh, it is.
I think one of the things too, though, every company and every team is different, so you need to find the right balance and the right things to do.
I mean, what you were describing are just good principles of leadership. And so, with AI, leadership doesn't go out the window. In fact, it feels like it's even more important. One of the things, we got a lovely comment saying that you're really providing wonderful practical advice. I'm curious, in that mode, I'm curious what kind of problems you're using these tools to solve for your organization, and how what you're excited about. And those may be two different questions, but that's how I roll.
Yeah, I use AI, Gen AI every day, all day. I would be bereft if someone said to me, we're taking away, for example, your ChatGPT or your Claude or your Gemini. I think for me, I'm a solopreneur, so I'm one person. I focus more on problems that help me be better at advising. I do so much reading and research. So one of my favorite tools is Perplexity, because it helps me really grok a topic and get into the details. I've been disappointed with ChatGPT's search function. It just doesn't have the same depth. It doesn't Like I use ChatGPT is probably my all-rounder LLM of choice, but I don't
Right.
love the way it helps me do research. So Perplexity, I'm seeing a lot of nodding. Folks love Perplexity. I think
Yeah.
they're doing a really great job. Other tools that I love are things like for content creation, Canva, which has, I love their Magic Studio for creating content. So if your team isn't already using something more robust like Adobe Suite, then Canva is a
Right.
great solution. For video editing, I love Descript and Opus Clip. You're nodding, Drew. You might use it for something like
We
this.
podcast, we use
Yeah,
Descript a
yeah,
lot. Yeah.
yeah. So if your
But
video
Opus, we don't use. What is Opus?
Opus is, it's very similar. So what's nice about that is you dump your long format content in and it breaks it up into shorts for social media, adds
Uh-huh.
captions. It takes the segments for you. Descript has something similar, but I found it just isn't quite as fast. So I use
Interesting.
both. So I think for me, it's all about like, what is the task I'm trying to do at the time? And then I go out and I can either do it through ChatGPT or I find a tool that helps me.
And have you gone through this exercise yet where you've said on Perplexity, what should I know about Tahnee Perry?
I haven't.
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is the new Google yourself thing, and it's fascinating.
Okay.
And
I'll
we
try that
now
out.
before every call I have, it's an automatic step that I do. And if you really want to know what your personal brand is, go have some fun and do that. But again, the difference between Perplexity and if you haven't used it, boy, get on that right away. There's a free version that's just fine for most things. Uh,
Yeah.
and there, it's, you know, it's really an answer engine.
Hmm.
And so, but going back to the personal branding thing, uh, what I'm interested in is how, as you're developing your personal brand, you may be able to, and various placements can impact how you show up on Perplexity,
Hmm.
right? Which gets us into this whole world of search AI. And is there some hope for affecting that? But anyway,
Yeah.
it's an exciting time in that way, and you guys can have some fun checking out your what Perplexity finds out about you.
There's actually another fun thing you can do in ChatGPT. And I actually, it's a little bit scary, but what you can do is you can ask ChatGPT, create an image of me based on what you know about my life. And they say that ChatGPT doesn't have a long memory, it has a certain amount of context, but it must save every one of your chats. So try that out and see what kind of image you get back. You might be surprised.
Wow, could you do the same thing in Claude?
I don't know. Potentially. Lisa
Yeah,
might know if you can.
and
I've
so
never
when it's
tried it
doing it
before.
based on the searches that you've done as well as whatever else it finds out in the universe.
I'm assuming. I mean, obviously these LLMs are a bit of a black box. We don't know what
Okay.
they're doing, but I assume so.
Oh, that's an image. Wow. Okay. Fun. We'll have to do that. That's another audience challenge. The audience is being very quiet today, so I think they're enjoying the conversation. But if you a reminder, if you do have any questions or want to come on camera, please raise your hand. Let's talk about when you're engaging with the marketing leaders. Where are they personally in terms of their own adoption and how important is it that they're using these tools as well?
It depends a little on the organization. I am so bullish and optimistic about artificial intelligence. I'm always surprised when I come across someone who says, "Oh, we've kind of dabbled in it, but we don't really know what we're doing." And I'm like, I'm shocked because I'm like, there's just so much benefit that you could be applying to your organization. And I think obviously all the folks you have on this call today are obviously leaning in and using
Right.
it. That's why they're here. And I think that's amazing. So I think it just depends on the organization. And there's also no correlation in company size, I have found. I work with
Right.
some startups that are very reluctant to get
Wow.
started on their AI journey. And I've worked with some mid-market enterprise companies they're just putting everything into it and getting huge benefits. So I think
Right.
it depends.
Yeah, I mean, everyone in our community knows that not only am I bullish about it, but I really believe strongly that the marketing leaders need to be in the tools to be able to be equipped to ask the questions. And it's very hard to not use the tools, to not ask questions. I'm not saying you have to be familiar with everything, but if you go through the process of trying to solve the problems and use it as a sparring partner and do some of the things that are easy, you start to get to a point where you say, oh, I wonder if it could do this. And that's when you've got just enough insight. Okay, we have a question from who wants to come on camera, Axel Kerstetter. Axel, what's your question?
Hi,
Welcome.
Drew. Thank you for having me. My question is really around how do you think about the value that the toolings are supposed to provide, in the sense that I think Lisa just put in here sort of her tool stack is like $70 a month, which isn't too bad. But when you sort of look a little bit outside of that, how do you attribute the value of the tool in terms of cost savings, time acceleration, and what's sort of your go-to model for explaining that to yourself and to your team?
Yeah, I think it depends on what what type of tool, because if you're implementing something like an enterprise level tool like 6sense, the cost for that is much higher than, say, if you're going to implement a tool like Clay, which is free, or if you use it, it's $20 a month for the pro version. So I think the assessment has to be, for a tool like Clay, where it's very inexpensive, I don't know that you have to sit down and go through a long assessment. I think what you do is you say, hey, let's allocate a little bit of budget, implement it for a set amount of time. And if we're getting, and then go back and look at what the benefits are. Are we saving money? Are we getting our leads cheaper? Is it pushing pipeline? So you can do a retroactive analysis. For something like 6sense or Salesforce, HubSpot, all of those are going to take a little bit more time. And I think you have to create a hypothesis because you don't have it in place yet. And you need to make some guesses about whether or not it's going to be worth your time and effort. I think if you have a set number of metrics you would like to meet, then at least you will know what your goal is. And then the second part of that is polling your community. So I think your huddle here is a good place to ask how folks have been finding their tool or their AI features. There's all kinds of networking groups on LinkedIn that you can join and ask what people's experience has been. But I think, again, it just, I know I say this a lot, it depends a little bit on the tool, the size, and how your team is going to use it.
But so Axel, I have a just slightly different thing is almost all of these things, particularly when you get into workflow, are benchmarkable. And that's an important step in this thing. If you benchmark, how much time does it take us to create a blog currently, right? So, and you sort of create a standard for whatever that blog is, the measurement of it, and you actually create a grading system. Once you benchmark it both in terms of the time and the quality of the output. Then you can then say, okay, now where you're doing it this way, how much time are we saving? So there's an efficiency advantage. And then there's the question of, can you do a quality upgrade? So if you can do both of those things, then, efficiency advantage is the easy way to show ROI. The quality upgrade is that will be the qualitative aspect of this thing. But again, I think that's the double whammy. When you can do both of those things, you can do it faster and you can do it better, then you've really killed it. But you got to benchmark it. That's the key point here in this. Once you do that, showing ROI is a lot easier.
Yeah, I can give you a real life example. So this is actually a client that Lisa and I worked on together, and we had a project with their international team, and they spent a lot of time translating their content. And they had a whole team, and they also hired external translators. And it was costing them, just under $100,000 a month or year. I don't remember. It was a lot. It was a lot.
Yes.
And it was a year. Okay. They came to us and said, hey, we think we can use AI for this. And we assessed a few tools and also custom GPTs. And we spent a couple of hours with their team and helped them optimize a custom GPT to help them translate into German. And then when they're happy with German, they did French and so on and so on. And what they found is that they didn't need the human translators anymore. So I guess this is another example. You said people are going to lose their jobs. I think translation is one of those roles that's going to find there'll be less need for.
Yeah.
Because what they do now is they run everything through the custom GPT. They do an internal review, and there are some cases where they may have a human translator come in, but they don't need anywhere near the amount of translation, the human side, than they did before. So they've also cut the time down from a 4-week review to almost a week. And that was the cost of a pro version of ChatGPT, which is $20 a month.
Yeah, I mean, and my understanding, I think I'm familiar with the case you're talking about. I mean, they went from 95% human to 95% bot and 5% human. That's a big swing. Hey, Lisa Adams, would you hop on for a second? Thank you for coming to join us. Hopefully, Melissa can figure out how to find you and put you on because I do.
Hi,
Raise your, oh, there you are.
I'm
Hey,
here.
anyway, I want to give her a shout out because was joined us at the Super Huddle and also for a bonus huddle like this. And I know you're doing interesting things. And you may or may not have heard me talk about your recent post where you put like your Gen AI tools on your front page of your phone. And I've copied you immediately on that. So thank you. And I now get a personal chance to thank you for that. But having heard some of this discussion, I'm curious. You must have had thoughts on, particularly on applications that you're excited about that we've been talking about.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest unlocks for CMOs and their teams is when they see a human AI org chart where you can see on that org chart where everybody belongs, right? You know, just a normal org chart. And then underneath specific functions or people are the actual GPTs or AI tools that those people have built, maintained, and managed. So for example, in product marketing, Tani and I have a team that has a battle card builder. And they built that GPT specifically to create battle cards. They also have a pitch deck builder. So whenever they have updates to a product, they run it through the GPT and it updates their slides. So it has a lot of value, right? Like the content creation team has a topic creator. It also has a content mapper where it maps the pieces of the assets to the appropriate parts of the buyer's journey. So what is now happening is these teams are kind of like a human AI superpower team. And the humans are actually seeing that the AIs are not taking jobs, that they are actually in support of the jobs and they're doing very specific tasks, specifically those that are mundane and really repetitive. They don't enjoy doing it. And so when they see it on an org chart, it's like an aha moment. This is not just a tool, this is a teammate that will allow me to do better work, faster work, and hopefully help them innovate. So I don't know if that helps.
No, it's really great. And it reminds me of, so if you look at robotic adoption, what's so interesting is that there are on factory floors, you can see how certain jobs have been replaced. There are things that robots can do that are frankly more precise than the human could do. And you can see that on the factory floor. But you can also see that where a human will be wearing a certain robotic suit that will make them have super strength. They'll be able to do something that will prevent them from injury. And it's a similar notion. As we said, there are going to be jobs lost like translation and so forth, but all the things that you talked about, creating a battle card builder or a pitch deck builder. Oh my God, first of all, I love that notion. All those things allow you to do more. The tricky part here, as we all know, is you can do more, but not better. And so I guess the part that I'm looking at now is, and with both of you on here, is how are we going to get to better? And that, like I think about in writing, for example, better means better editors looking at more stuff. Right. But I'm just, because you could give a tool to like a topic creator. They're not good writers. If they're not good editors, if they don't have their fingers, they're just going to say, oh, that looks good and go. So I'm wondering in your thinking about this, getting to better, not just more efficient with these tools, and what does it take for that?
I think it depends on your definition of better. So for me personally, ChatGPT, as one example, makes me more strategic. You could call that better. And the
Sure.
reason it does that is I use it as a thought partner. And I think you should have all of your team doing this. And you can ask it questions. You can tell it to poke holes in your arguments. You can have it help you brainstorm to come up with more ideas than you currently have. Now, sometimes the outputs that you get, you're like, yeah, I already knew that, or I've got a better thought pattern. But sometimes it surprises you, and it's like it gives you this idea or a perspective that you wouldn't normally have had. So to me, that's making me better, not necessarily more efficient. Lisa, I don't know if you feel the same way or if you have a different thought on that.
Oh, did you call on me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was like,
Sure.
so I
Yeah,
use a
yeah.
support
Connie's
button. I
taken
mean,
over the interview, so you're
I
on.
feel like
You're on
I
now,
feel like
Lisa.
Lisa is one of my idols, and I love working with her because she has such a strategic mindset around AI and great ways to use it. So I'd be interested to know what you think.
Yeah, so to your point, Tani, better is a spectrum, right? But when I think about AI, a lot of people think about it for productivity purposes. So it's faster, right? But I am now convinced that it's not just faster. And there are studies that say that it also helps with effectiveness, meaning better. Ethan Malik has published that study where, it does create some efficiencies, but the quality is better. And there's a third dimension to this where it is actually helping us to create work that's different. So it's not just faster, better existing work, it's potentially redefining and reimagining the work. So much like I shared with you the human AI org chart, right? Those humans are now doing very different work. They're now able to focus on strategic thinking, doing the things that they like to do. And the other dimension that's added to their work that is pretty interesting is that they're now guiding and managing and maintaining these AI assistants to support their business. The other aspect of, when Tani talks about being a better writer, I actually have a GPT where I've specifically instructed it to be good. And what I mean by that is if we wanted to write very differentiated content or standout content, like I would have to tell it, in creating this content, obviously I give it some knowledge, right? Our persona, our topics, the criteria that you need to use to create this content needs to fulfill one or more of the following. So challenge traditional beliefs or widely accepted beliefs, present unpopular opinions on trending topics, reveal overlooked areas of importance, suggest counterintuitive approaches. You kind of have to prompt it in that way. So it's not just taking what it knows about the 85% of the internet that it's trained on. You kind of have to say, give me some thought-provoking things that are counterintuitive to what you might find out there. Then it begins to write in that way, and it gives you some ideas, and then you just kind of work with it. Absent that, of course, it's, Andy Crestodina says, AI stands for average information.
Yep.
Without us guiding it and without us giving it the right information, that it certainly would not be as relevant. It would not be as good. So
I know, and that was exactly, and what a great place. And I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up this discussion, although I have another hour's worth of questions, and I know our audience does too. But you just answered the question that I was thinking about, which is, okay, you can use this as a topic creator, but if you have it with these things of challenge conventional thinking, unpopular ideas, counterintuitive, and that's baked in to your topic creator, you're going to get to some space, as some call it, blue ocean, right? You're going to get to something, perhaps, maybe, but it's a lot better than simply saying, hey, you're XYZ, write me a blog post on why, because that is not a formula for differentiation or effectiveness. It might be productive, but you're not going to get to the other two. Well, Tani, maybe you could wrap us up with one thing that you want everyone in the audience to remember when it comes to driving AI adoption. And Lisa, I'll give you the same question after Tani.
I think as a CMO or a leader of your team, don't let them tell you that AI doesn't work for them, because AI works for everyone, but in different ways. And I think it's if you provide them with the training and the space to experiment, they should be able to come back to you and tell you how it is helping them. And it might not write them a blog post, that I agree with that, but there are always ways that you can integrate it into your workflow that will help you be better and more efficient.
So we have no room for AI deniers. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Lisa, one thing to help drive AI adoption for the leaders in our audience.
Yeah, I think there's this misconception that it's all about AI and the tools. Where I believe where most people are not going and they're not talking about it is this is truly human change management. It is about a change in mindset and a change in behavior. And we have to be super empathetic and graceful in how we do this, because there are people who are fearful of their jobs. It paralyzes them. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that are completely leading in without the guidelines and the right tools to do the work.
Right.
So it's that also is risky. So we have to meet people where they are and then bring them along on the journey.
Awesome. I thank you both. Tahnee, first of all, thanks for spending an entire hour with us. How can the audience engage with you?
I am on LinkedIn, so you can look me up there, Tahnee Perry. I also have a newsletter I send out every week on AI and marketing that is called Zero to Unicorn. You can find a link for that on my LinkedIn as well, or you can head to my website, which is goa25.com.
Go A25. By the way, it's Tahnee, and every time I type it in, spell check fixes it.
I'm sure.
So
I know. I'm sorry.
I can't solve that problem for you, but it is that. So I'm glad you didn't use your first name in your URL. So thank you for that. And Lisa, people find you on LinkedIn as well.
I'm on LinkedIn. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you both. Really appreciate it. Thank you, audience, for staying with us.